Hello and welcome to GCSE Organisation. This is lesson 11, the video review lesson. So this lesson, what we're going to do is we're going to watch the following video clip. If you have a digital copy of this document, then you'll be able to just click on that. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to watch the video and then attempt to answer the questions. Now there's 3 pages of questions. Okay, you may want to answer underneath each line, but some of the questions are a bit longer, so you might want to answer on separate lined paper. That's fine. So there's quite a lot of questions, including some labelling questions, okay, including labelling the heart and drawing the path the blood takes through the heart. And in total, there are 41 questions. Okay, so you may wish to watch the video and mark the questions or answer the questions as you go. You may wish to watch the video and then answer the questions afterwards. Okay, so this is a summary of your learning, it's revision, and you need to know this, so you need to actually be able to answer all these questions without immediately watching a video beforehand. Okay, now we're giving you a video to help you, and that's fine, but for the exams you will need to know the answers to all these questions and be able to do them without any assistance. So once you've watched that and you've answered the questions, pause the video to answer the questions and everything, and then we'll go through those questions. So the rest of this video is the answers to these questions, but it's really important that before you go through the answers with me, you attempt all of these questions and try and find out the answers for yourself. You can watch the video or you can look back through the booklet. Both are an option. Okay, so pause the video whilst you answer them. It's going to take you potentially like an hour to do this, okay? So don't feel like giving up. Pause it, come back to it, do it over multiple days if you need to, okay? And then come back and we'll go through them in the rest of this video. Well done for attempting all those questions. We're going to go through those and mark them now. It may be that you've chosen to do some of the questions and mark them and then go back and do the rest. That's fine. Mark the questions as far as you get, then pause the video and go back and finish the rest of the questions before you continue marking. So question 1, what is an organ system? So an organ system is a group of organs working together to do a particular job or function. So tick it if you've got it right, and correct it if you haven't. Name the parts of the digestive system: the mouth, esophagus, stomach, liver, gallbladder, pancreas, small intestine, large intestine, rectum. Okay, so there's a lot there. If you've missed any, please make sure you add them. Question 3. What happens to enzymes at low temperatures? Well, they slow down. Question 4. What happens to enzymes at high temperatures? They denature. That means they change shape and they stop working permanently, so that even if you put the temperature back to normal, they will never work again. Question 5. What happens to enzymes outside their optimal pH? So they denature and stop working permanently, just like at high temperatures. Okay, so if you send them too far out of their optimal pH, they're completely denatured and permanently broken. Question 6, what is the lock and key mechanism? So the 3D shape of the enzyme's active site, the lock, will only fit one specific type of molecule, which is the key. So it's the idea behind this enzymes and molecules only having one type of enzyme to fit one type of molecule. Question 7, where is amylase produced? It's produced in the salivary glands, pancreas and small intestine. If you've missed any one of those, please write that down. Question 8. What does amylase do? Well, it converts larger starch molecules into smaller glucose or sugar molecules that can be absorbed by the body. Now, this is a full answer. If you have written starch, drawn an arrow and put glucose or sugar, that is also worth the mark. But I would like you, if you've done just this, to write the full sentence out as well, please. Question 9, where is lipase produced? Well, it's produced in the pancreas and small intestine. Question 10, what does lipase do? Well, it converts larger lipid molecules into smaller fatty acid and glycerol, which can be absorbed by the body. Again, if you've written lipid into fatty acids, because there's 3 of them, plus glycerol, you can have the mark, but you still need to write out the full sentence. Okay, question 11. Where is protease produced? In the stomach and small intestine. Sorry, stomach, pancreas and small intestine. If you've missed one, please make sure you add it in. Question 12. What does protease do? Well, it converts larger protein molecules into small amino acids that can be absorbed by the body. Again, if you've written protein and an arrow to amino acids, you can have the mark, but again, you need to write out the full sentence so that you have the full answer, because sometimes you will need to explain it in more detail. Where is bile produced? Well, it's produced in the liver. What does bile do? It emulsifies fats, which is just turning them into tiny droplets, and this increases their surface area. So if you've just written emulsify fats, that's great, that gets you the mark. However, I want you to make sure you've written down that this means turning them into tiny droplets, which increases their surface area. And the increased surface area is helpful because it means we can digest them efficiently. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question, 15. Label the respiratory system. So here we have the trachea. Then we have these two tubes here called the bronchi. Then we have the lungs. This is specifically the left lung. And here, it's not clear whether this is a rib or an intercostal muscle, so I've written both. Either of those will get you the mark. And if you want to add the other one on as well, so it's the ribs and intercostal muscles. Here we have the heart, and this here is the diaphragm. Now, spelling isn't essential as long as it's correct, as you can tell what it is. But if you haven't spelt it correctly, please do write the correct spelling next to it, okay? Because it is important that we learn how to spell these correctly eventually. You can still get the marks in science without perfect spelling. However, sometimes imperfect spelling turns one scientific word into another or makes it too difficult to tell between two different meanings, two different scientific words that mean two different things. So spelling is still essential in science. What does the heart do? Well, it pumps blood around the body in a double circulatory system. Now, if you've just said it pumps blood around the body, you can have the mark. But I want you to write in a double circulatory system because that is a fuller answer. What do the lungs do? Well, they deliver oxygen to the circulatory system and they remove carbon dioxide. Okay, again, this time you'll need to have both things for the mark. Label the heart. So we've got a few diagrams here. Let's see if we can't fit all this into one image. There we go. So we have got at the top there on the right, we've got the aorta. Okay, then we've got the pulmonary vein here. Sorry, the pulmonary artery here. Then we have got the left atrium here, the left ventricle here, although the left ventricle is more accurately here. This is actually a valve it's pointing to, but we're not going to worry about that, okay, because clearly they want you to know that this is the left ventricle. Over at the bottom here, we have the right ventricle and the right atrium at the top here. Now, I'm not entirely sure what this is pointing to. This is not something you need to know. Whatever this is just the cut through. So we're not going to mark that one. Okay. And this one here is the vena cava. Okay, thank you. Now we're going to move on to question 19. Draw the path the blood takes through the heart. Now, in blue here, this shows deoxygenated blood. Okay. So blue is the deoxygenated blood, and it comes in through the vena cava, into the right atrium, into the right ventricle, and you might have done yours with multiple arrows, that's fine, and then it goes up and out through the pulmonary artery. Okay, and that goes to the lungs. Then have the blood come back from the lungs. This is to the lungs, and this is from the lungs, comes back from the lungs, in here, and red is oxygenated blood from the lungs. Okay, and it comes down through the left atrium into the left ventricle and out the left ventricle up into the aorta and out round the body. Okay, and this is going to the body and this is coming from the body. Okay, so essentially, if you've drawn that correctly, you can have 2 marks, one for the oxygenated blood here and one for the deoxygenated blood here. Next question. Question 20. What does the aorta do? So it delivers oxygenated blood from the heart to the body. What does the vena cava do? It returns deoxygenated blood from the body to the heart into the right atrium. You don't need to put the part about the right atrium to get the mark. What does the pulmonary artery do? Well, it carries deoxygenated blood to the lungs from the heart, from the right ventricle, but you don't need to write that. What does the pulmonary vein do? Well, it carries oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart, specifically to the left atrium. But you don't need to write that part, that's why it's in brackets. What is the natural resting heart rate? Well, anything between 60 to 100 beats per minute, depending on your age, gender, etc. Okay, so BPM means beats per minute. You don't need to write beats per minute, just BPM is acceptable. Now, why might someone need an artificial pacemaker? Well, if the body's natural pacemaker fails or becomes damaged in some way, so it's not working properly, a pacemaker, which is just a small electrical device, will keep the heart beating correctly. So to get the mark, all you need to say is that a pacemaker will keep the heart beating correctly. That's enough to get you the mark. However, I want you to write this out in full, okay, to make sure that you fully understand and have explained what an artificial pacemaker is, because sometimes you're needed to explain that. So it might be, when would an artificial pacemaker be required? That's worth 2 marks. Okay, or what is a pacemaker or an artificial pacemaker? That might also be 2 marks. Okay, so this is preparing you for similar questions. Question 26. What do red blood cells do? Well, they transport oxygen from the lungs to the body, or to the cells in the body. What do white blood cells do? Well, they can produce antibodies and they can destroy pathogens in a variety of ways, but this is sufficient. You will need both parts of this to get the mark. What do platelets do? Well, they clump together to help the blood clot and stop bleeding. What does plasma do? Well, plasma carries the red and white blood cells and platelets, as well as dissolved nutrients and carbon dioxide. So the plasma is a liquid and it carries all of this in it. So you need to have all of this. It's quite a long answer. Please make sure you write out if you haven't got all of that. Question 30. What is cardiovascular disease? Well, it's a disease, or any of the diseases of the heart and blood vessels, such as coronary heart disease. Okay, so if you've written coronary heart disease, that is not a correct answer. It is an example of a cardiovascular disease, but you haven't answered the question. So you need to say that it's a disease of the heart and blood vessels. Cardio meaning heart, vascular meaning vessels. Question 31. What lifestyle factors can affect health? Smoking, poor diet, obesity, drinking excess alcohol, lack of exercise, radiation, exposure to chemicals called carcinogens that can cause cancers. Now, I will give you this mark if you've got any 3 of these, but I highly recommend writing out the rest of them so that you have more than 3 to think of, because sometimes they might ask you sort of slightly different questions. So there are different lifestyle factors that can affect health. Some of these are self-induced, or some of them are man-made, and some of them are natural. Talk about these. Okay, so you'll need to know that we're choosing lifestyle choices such as smoking and poor diet and lack of exercise and alcohol. Other things such as radiation and chemicals, then they happen. Okay, those aren't man-made necessarily, those are just things that happen. Okay, so any 3 of those you can have the mark. What is cancer? Well, cancer is changes in cells, that's the first part of the answer, that leads to uncontrolled growth and division of cells. So you need both parts for the answer there. What is a benign tumour? It is not cancerous, that's the first part, and it does not invade other parts of the body. So this is only worth 1 mark, but you need both sections of it. Question 34. What is a malignant tumour? So this one is cancerous. Sorry, there should be no space there. So cancerous. So that's the first part of the mark, which is very dangerous. And it requires prompt treatment to prevent it spreading to other parts of the body. Okay. Or you could write that it can spread to other parts of the body. Okay. So again, you need both parts for the mark. What is epidermal tissue? Well, it's the single layer of cells that covers the whole plant or epidermis. It's the outer layer. Question 36. What is palisade mesophyll? Well, it's found in leaves and it's the main site of photosynthesis. You'd want to write both parts to get the mark there. What is spongy mesophyll? It's found in leaves and helps facilitate gas exchange. Again, you'll need both parts for the mark. What is the xylem? It's found in roots, stems and leaves, so you'll need all of that for the mark, for the first half of the mark, and then it gives support and transports water and minerals for the second part of the mark. Question 39. What is the phloem? Well, it's found in roots, stems and leaves for the first half of the mark, and it transports sugars for the second half. Again, make sure you're writing anything that you've missed onto your answers with a pen in a different colour. Question 40. What is transpiration? So, long answer to this one. It's the process by which moisture, or water in fact, would be a better word than moisture, is transported through a plant from its roots to the small pores on the undersides of the leaves, so the stoma. From the leaves, it's released into the atmosphere through evaporation and diffusion. You may have also talked about the bonding between water cells, between water molecules. Okay, so you may have talked about the bonding between water molecules as well. There's quite a lot to this answer. Okay, so this is going to be worth 2 marks. Okay, so the first part of the mark is the idea that water is transported through the plant. Okay, so the fact that water is transported through the plant, that's the first mark. The second part is that the water is released into the atmosphere by evaporation and diffusion. Okay, so 2 marks there. Question 41, how can we measure transpiration? Okay, so we didn't do this in practical because we're not doing practicals in school here, but we did do a practical online which showed us and explained it. So you can measure the volume of water absorbed by the plant and calculate the rate of its absorption. So transpiration rate is the volume of water absorbed divided by the time taken to absorb it. Okay, and another option, so there's 2 marks here, one for the equation and one for explaining what we do. The other option, instead of measuring the volume of water absorbed by the plant, is you can also measure the volume of water evaporating out of the plant, but that's much trickier to do. So we tend to talk about the volume of water being absorbed. So this is just the same video that we had at the beginning. Okay, so you don't need to rewatch this because we've marked it together. So see how well you did there, add it up, give yourself a mark, and review any questions that you didn't get fully right, and make sure that you can still answer those questions. I highly recommend keeping this work because actually these video reviews are really useful for revision. Okay, so that's the end of our lesson. If you have any questions, please speak with your teacher. They'll be very happy to help you. Feel free to email them. Thank you very much.